And we would get in the ring and, we're warming up. I've already done my 10 minutes of jumping rope, which gets me out of my comfort zone, because I'm a big guy. You got to do 10 minutes of jump rope. And we're starting to do a little bit of mitt work or whatever. And this older gentleman, all kind of grizzled and gray, it comes in, he looks like he chews nails, and he comes in and he's squinting a little bit. And he says, "Hey man, do you mind if I get the corner so I can warm up and do some kicks?" And I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, that's Bill Superfoot Wallace,
Welcome to Kicking It with Sensei. And today we're joined by Quantum Martial Arts owner, Matt Pasquinilli, if I'm getting that right.
That's it. That's 100% correct.
My Italian's not very good now. But you're very welcome, Matt.
Well, thanks for having me.
And if you'd just like to give the audience a little bit of background on who you are and your martial arts.
Well, I started martial arts when I was a kid, like a lot of people. I think I saw the Karate Kid movie, the first one, years and years ago. And it, as a kid growing up, I had 4 brothers and I was right in the middle. So I got picked on a lot. And it was, I grew up in an area, it was a very rural area, farms and such. And there was a small judo program at the local community center. So that's how I got started. And that instructor stopped after a while and left. And I found a martial arts school, a Taekwondo school. And I remember asking my parents if I could go, and they said no. But I had always been working since I was a little kid for my father, making my own money. And so I rode my bike. I remember it was 13 miles and rode my bike every day. And I had 4 brothers, so we were all active. My parents worked all the time. And back then you could kind of come and go if you were old enough. And it's not like it is now, of course, with kids. But my parents didn't know for years. And I had my own money. I was a big kid. And when I went in, it was the first one was Korean Taekwondo school. And, he, as long as I gave him the money, he didn't care.
Yeah.
And, I trained with him for a few years and then went to the Marine Corps in the United States. And when I came back, found another martial arts school, Taekwondo school, with a totally different atmosphere. The instructor was an Olympic coach, and there were 19 world champions that trained in that school. And so it was like love at first sight. And I worked in that school I was a student for a long time. And then I think I joined right before I left for boot camp. And then I came back a while later and, kind of a young person, young man, full of angst and, hormones and frustrations and anger and all those things as a young person. And I remember the instructor saying, why don't you go to work for me? And I thought, I'd do it for a little bit. And I ended up moving into the school after a while, and I lived there for 6 years and, eat, drink, and sleep martial arts. And it was all I did, with a Korean family. Yeah. And it was one of those things where it was, there was a lot of good, and a lot of bad, not bad, but, just not the healthiest environment for, but it was what I needed, right? It was healthy for me because it was strict. And every time I would try to, fall back to my old bad habits and quit and run away from the challenge, then he would say, no, you can't, you can't go. Because I would go in, I'd say, I'm done, I'm leaving, I need to do something else. And he'd say, you're not mature enough yet. You didn't grow enough. Yeah. You can't. And somehow that kept me going. And he was smart enough to know how hard my head was and what I needed to grow and to learn. And then after that, I moved around a little bit and then found myself in my own martial arts school. I took a school over from another martial arts instructor, another Korean instructor, where we had helped him open, like in another city, maybe 100 miles away, and helped him open his school years before. And he just wanted out, and I bought it for $1. And it was a tiny little, storefront. And I remember the sink was about this big, and I washed myself, that was my sink. I lived on the floor, and I did that for another 18 months. And slowly from there grew into, a little bit larger operation. And then I started a nonprofit, and I probably spent the majority of my adult life working in a nonprofit martial arts school called the Asian Arts Center, which was in Ohio. And the school still exists in a form one of my students who started with me when he was 13, I gave it to him when he was 36. And, you know, I was ready to move on, move down here to Florida with my family. And he was ready to, you know, take some ownership and some leadership, and kind of renamed everything, recreated the whole business. And now he's doing as well as he can in the shutdown. And their shutdowns are a little bit more severe in Ohio than they are here in South Florida. So he has a stronger headwinds, but I think it's, you know, it's kind of hitting us all. So
it is,
but as far as the martial arts, I mean, I've been passionate about martial arts. I've learned as much as I could. You know, in the military, you learn a lot of things from a lot of different people, because you're geographically in different areas. And then, you know, I've traveled and sought out really great instructors. For a while, I was going to, you know, Korea to get more training. And the funny thing is, when you go, I don't know if you've traveled to Asia for martial arts, but especially in Taekwondo, when you go there, you realize that, and it's not to say that there aren't great instructors there, but most of the great instructors have left and spread throughout the world. So you can find these older, brilliant martial artists, and they're not very visible on YouTube and Instagram because of their age, but they still have a deep, deep amount of knowledge and experience. And there's so much out there that we don't see through the internet. Right. I mean, we get a few luminaries like Dan Inosanto in the United States, and Fumio Demura, and people like that who are a little bit better known. But some of the great, you know, deep spiritual leaders of the martial arts who also have just the wealth of knowledge that most of us will just scratch the surface of. You know, they don't have YouTube channels. They don't have Instagram. You know, they're not pushing themselves in that way. And so we have kind of this so Bill Superfoot Wallace, I don't know if you're familiar with Bill Wallace, but you know, he's just down the street down here. And I was in the boxing gym, because everywhere I go, I try to learn from somebody else. I think if you don't stay a student, you don't find coaches, people who know more than you do, you know, you grow stagnant and die. And I've been in hundreds of martial arts schools. It was a passion of mine for years to travel. Every time I go anywhere, I would try to visit as many martial arts schools as I could, sit inside, watch, learn, listen, and look. And I was looking for a lot of specific things for a long time. But you see, you know, there's the not typical school, because there's no such thing as typical with such a fragmented industry with just it's like, you know, guys, I worked with autistic children and adults for 20 some years. They call it the spectrum, and everybody exists on the spectrum. Martial arts is on the spectrum, right? There's this broad spectrum of personalities and interests, and you get everything from very little skill and knowledge and ability to just deep and broad and wide and you know, and everything in between, and personalities too, from the quiet, stoic, professional, serious martial artist to, you know, the goofy, you know, kind of over the top, just, and again, not in a bad way. Everything's just different. That's what makes life so beautiful and rich and such a great experience, is that we're not all the same. But anyway, so you know, there's this typical martial arts school where you go in and they've got trophies everywhere, and most of them are dusty and broken, or if they're even if they're not, you know, they can be kept well, but they were earned 20 years ago, 22 years ago. You know, with the head instructor of the school, man or woman, in their prime at 18 to 24 years old, or 16 to 24 years old. And now it's a little bit older and a little bit younger, because the kids get into martial arts at a younger age. And then their success is maybe now, for some of the younger people, you know, they started at 8 going to tournaments, and they were very successful until 17 when they started fighting adults or whatever. But and they're still living off of those accolades or those accomplishments. And, you know, in my generation, you know, people and I've watched a few of the interviews you've had. You have a lot of people in my generation, right? So you have this idea that you have these martial artists who are in their prime, physically, mentally, martial arts, you know, spiritually, 18 to 24 years old. And that's when they won their trophies. That's when they were the national champion or the world champion at the local event, you know, because that's very common. You know, the world champion of whatever small little town or that region or whatever. I mean, that's so common. It's kind of a joke, but and that's all over the walls, you know, and that's how what they're living on still. And the fact is, people come in for martial arts now, they're looking for fitness, or they're looking for self-defense, or for their kids, for the most part, they want them to pay attention and do better in school and build their self-confidence in a new world. And it's a totally new world, and it's a new world since March of this year. So we're in a new world. Definitely. But the so finding an instructor, finding somebody who you can learn from, somebody who can push you, get you out of your comfort zone. So I found a Cuban boxing coach. You know, the Cubans are famous because they're communists. They don't compete in professional matches. But they dominate the Olympics, right? They dominate the amateur level because they're such great scientists and artists when it comes to boxing, Western boxing. So in my opinion, you know, growing up, I've always been infatuated with the Olympics, right? And Taekwondo, luckily, was an Olympic sport, and I had an Olympic coach, and I trained and had instructors and trained with guys and men and women who were on the U.S. Olympic team, the first teams, you know, 88 in Seoul, Korea, and those first few teams, 88, 92. So I find this boxing coach here he's been a coach in Greece, he's been a coach in all of the socialist countries. He's been, you know, because they send him from Cuba to these other places. Great guy, great instructor, and I get a great workout when I work out with him. And he's in this a little bit rougher area of town where boxing usually exists in the States. And so I love going in there. It's great, you know, diverse gym, lots of different kinds of people. And we would get in the ring, and, you know, we're warming up. I've already done my 10 minutes of jumping rope, which gets me out of my comfort zone, you know, because I'm a big guy. You got to do 10 minutes of jump rope. And, you know, we're starting to do a little bit of mitt work or whatever. And this older gentleman, you know, all kind of grizzled and gray, it comes in, you know, he looks like he chews nails, you know, and he comes in and he's squinting a little bit. And he says, "Hey, man, do you mind if I get the corner so I can warm up and do some kicks?" And I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, that's Bill Superfoot Wallace. You know, last time I saw him, because I'm from Ohio and he's from Indiana, which are right next door. Two states are next to each other. That's, you know, 1,000 miles from here. And, you know, back when I was young, and I used to see him at tournaments all the time, and I'd go to his seminars, but, you know, he doesn't know me from Adam. So I said, yeah, sure. You know, and the whole time I'm distracted. And my boxing coach is smacking me in the head because he realized, you know, he wants me to pay attention and get my hands up. And I said, I think that's this guy that was one of my childhood heroes. He's like, "You mean Superfoot?" And I said, "Yeah." And you know, so then we talk and we meet and whatever. I forget what got me on this tangent, but Bill Superfoot Wallace, at 70 plus years old, still gets out of his comfort zone, still does exercises which challenge him to grow, still believes in the power of martial arts to transform your life at 74, 75 years old. And at that time he was training, this is pre-COVID, his last year sometime, he was training for an exhibition match with another gentleman in his 70s in Canada. Because why not? Because he can. Yeah. And so that's what, you know, martial arts is to me. And when I think about martial arts, I think about how I got into it and why I'm still in it, because I always come back to it, right? Yeah. It's what it does for Bill Wallace, but it's what it does for me. And it's what it does, you know, for thousands of students now. I've had thousands of students either working for somebody else or teaching my own programs. And, you know, the number of anecdotal stories about how they've improved different aspects of their life, whether they're physically more fit, emotionally more fit. Almost all of them are emotionally more fit, better able to handle stress, better able to, you know, be unstoppable in life. If they're little kids, if they're older, learning how to reconnect with their youth and their vitality and their energy, which is really where I'm at now. I'm in South Florida, and in Ohio, you know, I've taught thousands and thousands of younger students and adults, but mostly younger. I mean, that's the reality of our industry, especially Taekwondo. We did it to ourselves, right? We devalued the black belt. We started giving the black belt to younger and younger kids, and made every excuse in the world. Started, especially over here. The reason I was ready to close the operation in Ohio, or, you know, let somebody else take it over. You know, I was traveling around. I was seeing all my peers playing dodgeball and having Nerf gun fights and having, you know, parents' night out where they're doing Pokemon, or, you know, becoming more and more cartoonish, and it becomes more and more of a joke. And martial arts was never made for children. Martial arts was made for us. Martial arts was made for adults, right? Martial arts is fighting at its core. And people have devolved into this idea that martial arts gets better grades, helps focus in the classroom, yet listen to mom and dad, get your room clean. And yes, all that stuff can be part of it. But first, it has to be fighting. And fighting for self-defense, fighting if it's a do style, karate do or judo or taekwondo. The do means improving yourself through this discipline, this effort. If it's not, if it's just a jujitsu, if it's, there's still great value there, the esoteric side, the aesthetic side, and then this whole idea that, we've had this funny emergence in the last, since the advent of having a camera everywhere. Everything gets recorded. Street fights get recorded, assaults get recorded, combat in Afghanistan, Iraq, North Africa, all of that's being recorded in real time. And people who are smarter than us are dissecting, and they're coming up with this idea that, all these things that we thought worked, they don't work. They don't, This is like when the Gracies first came to the United States. I remember so clearly when the Gracies started popping up at these regional tournaments. And back then, I competed a lot. I came from a school that was extremely successful, and and we still came up with this. I had this idea back then that you had one punch, and that one, you hit the makiwara, just so that your knuckles would be hard, and you had one punch, stop the fight, break the jaw, skull, because Masayama, the Kyokushin founder, he grabbed the bull and he smashed it in the head. And we all broke rocks and everything with our hands. And we really felt like, one kick or one punch, all we had to do was hit it, deliver it right. And we really believed that. And the Gracies came and completely, they didn't have to say anything. They demonstrated, they proved. And the funny thing is now, and I know I'm kind of all over the place, but I know you have some questions for me, but this idea that the Kung Fu guys are kind of back there again. Where some of the guys coming out of China, excuse me, the Chinese styles, they believe again that they have that one style to beat all styles, and that their Tai Chi or Wing Chun or Jeet Kune Do or whatever can beat the Western boxer. It's like the Master Wong. Master Wong is so funny, so fun to watch. Great martial artist, you can see through his demonstration, and he's evolved and he's grown. And I think some people have missed that, but he started getting into. When he started to do this, to start to reach out to other martial artists so that he could grow his YouTube channel. And so he started to collaborate. He started to realize and let go, and to his credit, he seemed to have let go of this idea. He still does the clickbait where he'll say, how can Wing Chun beat the Western boxer? Well, I can't. The form that we're talking about, right? There are great aspects there and the great value there. But it's, it's like martial arts is not self-defense. Self-defense is self-defense. And I can't explain it any better. You had one of your earlier interviews with
Peter Constantine.
Northern England.
Peter.
Yeah. Brilliant. The way he described it, brilliant. So, I can't improve on how he explained that, but that's the truth. And I've known that for, since I was a military policeman in the Marine Corps. Martial arts is not self-defense. And when I teach my students now, because I've broken free from the need to have some certification from a group in Korea or Japan or China, I don't need anybody else to approve of what I'm doing. Not anymore. It doesn't even occur to me. I can teach all the principles of Western boxing, how to move, how to cover, and how to take a hit. And that's what people miss all the time too, is that boxers from day one, not the first day, from the very, very beginning part of their training, are getting hit, and it's under control, but they're getting hit, and then they're hitting. And that's two things that a lot of martial arts schools don't do. It's still today, which is unbelievable, but it all came out of that, that Gracie broke that free, where we believe that, it's going to work, and it doesn't. If you don't know how to grapple, and you meet even a Western wrestler, it doesn't have to be a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt. A judo player, somebody who knows how to pick you up and throw you on the ground, and you're on the ground and you don't know what to do, you're done. So
that's it,
and we've known that now for 20 years. And now people look for blending the styles, but there's still a lot of people who hold on to this idea that, you know, they don't understand, you know, that you have the esoteric style, you have the aesthetics, you know, you have what looks pretty and what's good. You have and there's so much value in traditional martial arts. There's the value of the discipline. There's the value of the beauty. There's the value of the self-improvement, stretching, strengthening, improving the cardiovascular fitness. All that is true. But if you're talking about and we realize too, because we know as traditional martial artists, the student who comes in, who just wants to learn how to street fight, if they commit to it and they stay with it in time, very quickly, usually they let go of that idea. Their ego subdues and they don't need, or their fear, and they don't need to learn how to street fight anymore. They realize, you know, it's really something else that they needed. They needed confidence. They needed self-esteem. They needed to feel good about themselves and not be either afraid or a meathead, right? And so once they let go of that, then they embrace the beauty of the martial arts. And having said that, we still, you know, I still run into a lot of guys who, out of fear usually or ignorance, are teaching that only their style, that's all you need to learn. And in 2020, you know, that ship has sailed.
Yeah. So I think there's always a need for more learning and always keeping that beginner's mindset. And I know the guy that actually started our clubs now, he's 84 now.
Yeah.
And he's actually learning Wing Chun at the minute. But he's been 70 years this year in martial arts, and he's still going back to learn something new. And it's just inspiring.
That's what keeps him young.
Yeah.
What's your background in martial arts?
Well, it started out with boxing, and through my teens, done a lot of kickboxing and alongside the box. And then kind of went into jiu-jitsu then, sort of mid-teens, and done Japanese jiu-jitsu right up to my 20s. And then I found a system called Shinken Goshin Jitsu, which is sort of a karate, jiu-jitsu, judo blend. And I've been doing that since I was about 21, so around about 14 years now. That's the style that I actually teach at the minute.
Yeah.
So it would have been the guy that founded that and created that style way back in the 60s. He's 84 now and he's still learning, and it's unbelievable seeing someone at that age still classing themselves as a beginner and going back and learning something new. So
that idea of beginner mindset, or, you know, here in education, it's very popular to call it lifelong learning.
Yeah.
Takes that need to push your ego down and just get out of your comfort zone. I mean, I'm so firmly, because I'm now spending a lot of time working with older men and women, like in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, who are trying to reconnect. And you know what it is? They feel frail, they feel fragile, and they've never felt that before, and it's not a comfortable feeling. And they go to a restaurant, and there's some aggressive younger person, and they're with their spouse or their grandchildren, and now all of a sudden, you know, their whole life, they were probably wrong, but their whole life they thought, you know, I could beat this whatever, you know. And now, because they could get angry and they were physically fit and strong and fast and athletic, and now they feel frail, and that the fear creeps in. But taking somebody and getting them, for me, learning how to work with them is constantly about getting out of their comfort zone, because you know, they may have been active for 40 years playing golf, and they may play golf every single day, and a lot of them do, but it's the same movement, and so they develop weakness in their entire body, except for where they're really strong with that one skill, and then the flexibility in the mind. And so for an 84-year-old instructor to go back and reconnect with something like Wing Chun, which is probably different than, you know, in a whole, forces his brain to think in different ways, creating new neural pathways in the brain and new stem cells, and, you know, firing things. That's what gives them the elasticity and the flexibility. And life is all about flexibility. You know, as soon as you become rigid and try to stand in front of the COVID, and not the disease, the shutdown, the reaction of the governments, the stripping of freedoms, seemingly, that this COVID pandemic is, and if you try to stand in the, you know, in front of the tsunami, you know, you just get crushed and you're just destroyed. But if you can learn to bend and move, and, you know, and that's what martial arts is. That's why it's so beautiful. But we have to find a way to really connect with it in 2020, 2021 going forward that makes sense for where we're headed, because we're never going back to normal. And the COVID just accelerated where we were going anyway, which is this connection through digitization, through media. This is where we were headed anyway. And I've been saying for 5 or 6 years that I think a child will go to mom or dad and say, Mom, Dad, I want to learn karate. I want to learn Kung Fu or whatever. And then mom or dad will say, Siri, Google, Alexa, or whatever their device is, sign Jimmy up for karate. And then Siri will say, do you want to learn from Bruce Lee? Do you want to learn from Jackie Chan? Do you want to learn from Chuck Norris? And you'll say Chuck Norris. And then there'll be an avatar, and it'll have Chuck Norris's face, his voice, because they'll have lifted it from all of the movies and all of the TV shows. And they'll have had an actor, like they make video games, with all the dots, and he'll have done all the things. And then they'll have the haptics, like the way your phone buzzes, or a tuft of air, or all the ways, the little servos in your gloves, and maybe you put the gloves on, and then Chuck Norris is standing in your living room next to you, and he's saying, turn your hand over more, and you can actually feel it. And that's where we're headed. We're headed that way. There's no question, in every activity, every sport. And it's not just martial arts. So learning to be adaptable and not standing rigid because you're uncomfortable. And people say to me all the time, no one will ever learn martial arts from their computer. And now no one has a choice. And all of my contemporaries, all of my peers who have martial arts schools have Zoom call classes, and it includes jiu-jitsu and it includes judo. And they're trying to teach students virtually so they can eat and feed their children, because if they don't have some income, they're done. And a lot of schools, I don't think will survive this. I think we'll lose up to 50% of the schools in the West, who are commercial, and there's just, because some schools have been now shut down for 3 months. I opened this new location in March. And then the very next week that I opened officially, I got the letter from the county saying, you have to shut down completely for several months. And then, who knows what happens now, because now seemingly the numbers are expanding again, and the nervousness is there. And the feeling is that the government will then come again. And again, you can complain. I can complain about it. I can say, I don't agree with it. I don't like it. I don't believe in it. But I don't have it, I'm not going to win. I'm not going to fight that fight. So I say, okay, how can I feed my family? How can I keep the lights on? How can I keep going? And that's where, and a lot of people are just going to give up and say, I can't.
We've been closed since March now.
You've been closed since March?
Yeah, we've 7 dojos running regionally, and all of them have been closed since March. And there was a short period in the middle somewhere, I think around May time, where everything was allowed to reopen. And we could sort of see that it wasn't going to last. So we took a time for the instructors to get together and record a lot of video, and rather than opening the clubs again. And then the whole thing shut down. And we had maybe about a year's worth of video that we could put up videos every week for the students in the club. But it's March since we've actually had a student physically learning with us. So it's been a long time. But
and how long will your students pay for video access when they can get, eventually you can find anything for free online. And loyalty is important. Some people do it out of loyalty. Some people do it out of empathy for the instructor, and they have the means, so they'll continue to pay. But the schools that I talk to who are completely shut down, they watch their Zoom income go like this, every month, of their, not in person classes, and it's just a little at a time, and it's hard. It's hard, and they're working harder than they've ever worked to try to keep 60% of their income, and then trying to keep 50% of their income. And then they're working even harder, trying to come up with more ideas to keep 30% of their income. And the landlord, I don't know, I know the situation in Europe is sometimes a little different, but the landlord, I can't pay him in Zoom calls or whatever, I can't pay him in goodwill. I have to pay in dollars. So and that's how a lot of people are looking at it, and I can, if you can pay your rent and keep the lights on, Can you pay your mortgage at your house? Can you pay for your kids to go to school? Can you put food on the table? And how long can you do that? And it's really frustrating because some of the martial artists aside, who are, maybe the fringe, most martial artists are so passionate and believe so much in what we're doing because of what it did for us when we were children and young people. And it transformed us in a way that we want to give that gift to other people. And we don't want to do anything else. I'm standing now because I can't sit. I got rid of my desk in Ohio. I had a very large building and 5 classrooms, and I had a very nice office, and I had a walking treadmill for 15 years. And, it started, I went to my internist, my doctor, and he said, your blood pressure is going up. It's hereditary. I said, it's not hereditary. My parents didn't eat well. I didn't eat well growing up. It's lifestyle. And he said, no, it's hereditary. And then I researched it, and I got rid of my desk, and I would stand on the treadmill, and I would walk at, 1 mile an hour, 2 miles an hour. And I worked, and you stop wasting time when you do that. And I've been doing that for, I've been standing for now 20 years, and my numbers have always been excellent since then. The body mass index and the blood pressure and all of the other markers for, the lifestyle diseases. And so, but I say that because I'm thinking, I can't imagine going to work in somebody's office and I will. I mean, I would do anything. I'll do anything if I have to feed my family, but that's not what I want to do. Right. We're martial artists. We want to teach what we believe in and what we love.
That's it now. I know recently, it was 3 months ago, I've taken a job as a health insurance salesman.
Yeah.
So it's a big, but my wife keeps joking, saying that when the martial arts clubs open again, you'll be beating people up and then selling them the insurance to cover them when they get to hospital. So
that's perfect. I love that. Yeah.
So, yin and yang.
Yeah, for sure. How's that going? Does that help with is that a successful thing?
No, it's been very helpful, especially to come up to Christmas now. So
that's good.
It's not the same as being in a dojo training. It's completely different. I'm sitting in a chair all day rather than moving about, which I've been doing for many years. But we'll all get back to normal soon enough, or some sort of normal.
Yeah, a new normal. It'll be a new normal. But there's also the sense of purpose, and there's something to be said. Sense of purpose to provide for your family. That's number one, always. But there's also, and I know we speak the same language when it comes to the way martial arts can change the way someone thinks about themselves. And learn how to speak up for themselves and go from being bullied and pushed around and feeling, and even if they're not being bullied by a person, just by insecurity. Insecurity is an awful tyrant, or fear. Fear is a horrible tyrant, right? They're afraid to speak up. They're afraid that somebody's looking at them. They're afraid that they'll make a mistake. And all of those things are such natural things as human beings. We have all of those insecurities. And that, you start from the just training and the sweating and the, partner work and getting the bruises and the cuts and the tears and the breaks. All of those things add up to a very strong internal person. And I mean, the sense of purpose that comes from that, as compared to doing another job, it's incomparable. And like I said, of course, always feeding your family, providing for your family is always number one. But is that all that there is to life? It can't be, right? Yeah.
But I know on your YouTube channel now you do cover a lot of weapons.
Yes.
What got you interested in weapons, and have you got a favorite weapon to train in?
Well, so the bow, I have all my weapons just right here next to a big bucket of them, and I have probably the most I have are the bow. And I know when you say bow staff, you're saying staff. I get that correction from people at least once a day in my comment. And I try to be patient and say, the reason that I do that is because people are typing in on YouTube, looking for bow staff training. They don't know the Japanese terms. They don't know that bow staff means staff. And it's not my job to criticize them for saying the wrong thing. And I'm not a linguist. So I use that so that they can find it. And you understand about titling the videos. And, and if you believe in what you're doing, you want this to grow, right? You want all of these great conversations with great martial artists around the world to reach as many people's eyes and ears as possible.
Yeah.
So you have to learn how to title your videos. But the bow was, for me, I grew up, my father was a painting contractor. He painted apartments and houses and buildings, but mostly commercial, and inside and outside. And I grew up with a painter's pole and a sanding pole. So when you put the drywall paste on and then it's too thick, you come back and you sand it with a pole with a thing on the end. And it usually screws in and screws out because you can use it also to paint with the roller, the big roller. Yeah. And so I would, grab while I'm, waiting, for the next job or lunch break or something, just because of the way my mind works. I don't know the ADD, ADHD. I'm sure if I were ever, someone were to talk to me for a while who feels passionate about that, they could say, I'm ADD or ADHD, but it was a way to keep my mind busy. And, it was a weapon that was in the school. So in especially the martial arts school that I spent the most time with, the instructor is Korean, but his background, his instructor is, went to Japan during the occupation of Korea and studied with Gichin Funakoshi, the founder of Karate Do, or
Shotokan,
And he went, and then after the war, came back to Korea, and my instructor was his student. So, my lineage goes my instructor, and then his instructor, and then Funakoshi. So it's very traditional martial art, very deep, very rich. But the other interesting thing about my instructor is that he had this deep connection with all these other great martial artists, his cousins, his friends in Korea and around the world, who were high ranking in Hapkido, which is basically Japanese jiu-jitsu, but the Korean word Hapkido, and then Judo, Kendo, and Shippoge, which is the Korean word for like Shaolin Kung Fu. So Kung Fu. So the style that I grew up in, spent the most time in, is a very blended style. It has a lot of weapons. So it has the bow, it has the staff, but it's a blended style between the Korean, Japanese, or the Chinese style, which is more like you would see in the wushu, some more big flowery motions, and then the very traditional like kobudo Japanese style. So people who come from a very traditional style, it's not the Chinese style. It's always the Japanese guys who come from a kobudo style. They'll say, there's no spinning. There's none. You're not allowed to spin. What are you doing spinning? You can't spin. It's a waste. And I said, no, you don't understand. And I always say it's like skipping rope, right? So a boxer skips rope, not just bounces, but all the footwork to condition the legs, the heart, the lungs, the body to fight in the ring. But he doesn't take the jump rope into the ring. He hits the speed bag to condition the body, to get used to the reflex, to build endurance in the arms. He hits the heavy bag to build power for the knockout punch. But he doesn't take any of the bags with him into the ring, right? In the Rocky movie, he's chasing a chicken and he's got the string. He doesn't take the chicken into the ring. And so the spinning that I love to do and people love to learn is not for self-defense. It's not Darth Vader or Darth Maul or whatever his name is. The Ray Park, the actor who plays Darth Maul, is a great martial artist. I think Korean style mostly. And, he's doing this motion with his double-bladed lightsaber. Well, that's in the movies, right? And we know about the movies. It's not real. It's choreography. And then the traditional, the story of like Musashi, and he's fighting against the guy with the long staff, and then he defeats him, and then the guy goes back and he cuts it down and comes up with the Joe, the shorter staff, and they fight again, and he beats Musashi the second time. They're not using the spinning, if those are true stories. They're using the Japanese style, very basic. And that's how we would defend ourselves on the street. The boxer has great skills, and especially if you fight like an experienced boxer, even like a Golden Gloves or a low level, amateur, a good amateur boxer, and you don't know how to box, you're gonna have a hard time unless you have great grappling. But, you know, even the boxer is not going to be on the street defending himself that way. And then the other argument that's really funny to me is that people talk about the practicality of the weapons for self-defense on the street. Now, I've seen people walking from time to time over my period of my lifetime down the street with a long staff. Not a lot. They're usually wearing a trench coat too, and a fedora or something, because in their mind they're living, you know, and they've been picked on in school, and they're a younger person, or they're a little off, a little odd. So no, it's not a practical weapon for self-defense. Or they'll criticize on like the tonfa, you know, or, you know, one of my favorites, the kali stick, you know, fighting with the kali stick. You know, you can't carry those, or the nunchucks. Obviously, you can't carry the nunchucks.
Yeah.
In most states in the United States, there's strong laws. And if the police officer pulls me over because I'm swerving or something, and he looks in my passenger seat and sees this stick or the nunchucks or something, he now has probable cause to pull me out of the car and ask me, where are you going? What's your intention with that deadly weapon? Yeah. Even though anything can be a deadly weapon. But this, the cane, right? Yeah. You can bring the cane with you in most places that you go. You have the ability to jab, strike, to hook and rake. And so this is my favorite practical weapon, but my first weapon, the bow, will always be, you know, my true love. It's the one that I spend the most time with, and I feel gives me the most health benefit, because it helps to keep my hands flexible and strong. And I get a comment from my followers on YouTube, either in the comment section or direct emails, maybe once a week, saying, thank you so much. My hands are no longer painful every day. Yeah. Or they had what we call a trigger finger, or they had an arthritic knuckles and that's gone, or they had tendonitis and it's gone now, or their shoulders have hurt for 20 years. And now after using the bow staff, they have no more pain. So it's a rewarding weapon for me, but it's like, there are sticks everywhere. So I love just the idea of fighting with a stick, but I'm not out looking for fights and street fights. And I understand, because I'm a mature man, a grown man, that the likelihood of somebody having, you know, a knife is real, but you usually have to provoke someone into that. You have to be in the wrong place at the wrong time most of the time. That doesn't mean it's not impossible. I mean, you can be minding your business in the right place, and just chance of fate, the wrong person is there, meaning to hurt innocent people. Yeah. And then you look around and you see what you have to defend yourself. But, you know, there's like the Fred Mastro. I don't know if you've seen Fred Mastro, the knife fighter, and he has a lot of techniques to, this is an old one, to fight with the knife and take it away from people. And I'm not that passionate. I'm not so passionate that I want to be, you know, sliced up. Yeah. But I also respect the fact that he knows more than I know when it comes to those things. And that's an interesting part of YouTube and online teaching, is that you have the vast majority of people will be grateful for the things that you're doing, will be genuinely interested in learning, as long as you're a good person, and you get better. You get better the more you do. I have uploaded over 1,000 videos since I've started, but I've removed a few. I'm getting ready to hit the 1,000 milestone of the ones that I want to have there. Yeah. Sometime this week, I'll have 1,000 that will be there. And it doesn't mean anything. It's just, you know, personal ego. But the idea that there's still a small percentage of experts, you know, I call them basement experts. They're sitting somewhere in their mom or dad's home in the basement, and all they do is consume what other people create. Yeah. They only read about it, and they become experts at knowing the right answer, but they don't sweat. And they don't have scars, and they don't have, pulled knee and leg and dislocated shoulder from competition, or from self-defense, or from application, or from hard training. all they have is an opinion. And I learned a long time ago, because I was stupid and young once too, and I would have strong opinions, but I've learned really in martial arts, especially, you have to let go of all of your opinions and be open. And you'll still find things that strike you as very ridiculous, right? And like the Tai Chi guys in China who go up against the MMA fighter, and they're literally using their Tai Chi and they're ready, and the guy comes in and within seconds just knocks him unconscious, because that's reality, right?
Yeah.
No, the Tai Chi, there's no dim mak, there's no you're not going to throw your chi and destroy him and crush his, or whatever it is. You know, when he comes up to smash your face, if you don't know how to cover up and maybe move laterally and how to sprawl to stop them from taking you down, you're going to be in real trouble. But short of that, you know, the rest of the people who, these, you know, keyboard warriors is a term that I've heard a lot, and it's very small percentage, but I've seen them viciously attack other martial artists, especially Jake Mace. I don't know if you know who Jake Mace is.
Yeah, I remember Jake Mace now.
Everybody, not everybody. Again, it's a small percentage. A lot, and they were all kung fu diehards, and they were the kung fu type who believed that the Wing Chun guy is going to beat Mike Tyson, right? Ip Man, at his height of his pinnacle of his skill and ability and knowledge, could have beat Mike Tyson. No, he couldn't have. It's just not. It's not rational to think that way, right? Mike Tyson was beat by a guy from the city where I grew up, Buster Douglas, who was 6'8", and had just lost his mother. And on the mother's as she was dying, he promised his mother he would beat Mike Tyson. That's who can beat Mike Tyson. But Ip Man at 120 pounds or whatever he is not going to beat lightning fast, the destroyer that Mike Tyson was. And anyway, so but you get those comments, and so Jake Mace was being just brutally attacked, and the way that those people attack, the words that they use are so not just angry. They show how immature they are and how weak they are mentally and physically. And I would see them, and I would just respond, and I would say, if you don't believe what he's saying is legitimate or truthful or honest, make your own videos. He's obviously spent a lot of time learning how to do YouTube well and teach in front of a camera. If learn how to do that, and then if your martial arts is better, people will see that. But don't come here and just try to trash a person and say personal, and they're always personal attacks. Like they knew him, like he had come over and did something horrible to their mother. That didn't happen. All he did was make a video to try to help somebody who had a passion about learning martial arts, who probably lived somewhere in the world where there's no running water or consistent electricity, but they have a smartphone and they have YouTube and they have Facebook. That's what he did. He made videos to say, here's how to learn this, just like Master Wong and the rest of us. That's all we're doing. But, and criticizing is fine, because I get people who point out where something that I said is questionable or possibly wrong or is wrong. And I'm the first to say, you're right. I hadn't thought about it that way. Or you could be right, because I don't know everything, or I'll stay open to it. And then sometimes, I'm like, no, you're not. You just don't, you haven't been alive long enough, or you haven't thrown the 500,000 front kicks that I've thrown. You haven't done those things. So when you've done that, then you can come back. But I say that very rarely. Mostly it's you could be right. And there are, like I said, it's like back in the days when you would go to tournaments and you would see that there would be local fighters who could probably beat the national champion, but they work a full-time job and they have no interest going to the national tournaments, whatever the sport was. And those people will always exist. And they do know a lot. And like I said, all of the old masters and the old instructors. And then you have the people who have just been so earnest in their training that they have developed a high level of skill and knowledge and experience. And you can't discount that. You have to value that. But because they don't have a title, then you Dismissed all the time.
See, I think Sensei Ando summed that up well. He said, you forget about ranks, forget about your belts. He goes, look at the experience. He goes, you've got many people in backyards who have been training for 20, 30 years and don't hold any rank.
Right.
And I think he was very right with that now. But,
I think so too. Yeah.
Definitely. And I know recently someone mentioned to you now about Irish stick fighting.
Yeah.
And do you think you'll ever do a tutorial on the live stream
Absolutely.
on
But I don't want to pick up a shillelagh and start speaking out of my arse, right? Because I could, you know, but I wouldn't. My father-in-law is Irish, and I think I mentioned this to you that, you know, he's from Wicklow, and right next to Wicklow is the town of Shillelagh, and there's a stick fighting. There's a shillelagh manufacturer there where he finds and in the traditional way creates those. So I want to learn. I've watched enough videos to know that there's a lot of crossover, right?
Yeah.
There's only so many ways that your body can move, and that's like saying, you know, that and that's why you can't say one thing is right and one thing is wrong. They're just different.
Yeah.
You might not understand the context, you might not understand the application, you might not understand part of it. So it's better just to say, not for me right now, right?
Yeah.
This is not for me right now. It's not bad. I just don't understand enough, or it's just not what I need right now. So with the shillelagh, I've always been fascinated. You know, there was a band in the States, for a Boston Irish group, and I think the title of the song was Shillelaghs and Shenanigans or something. And I remember as a young person, you know, that really spoke to my angst, and ever since then I've always been fascinated. So I've sought it out, and I've seen some demonstrations, you know, at street fairs or festivals. So so I do want to do the tutorials, but I want to find somebody who I can videotape. Just like when I started boxing, I didn't get out and say, this is how you do it, because that wasn't my, that's not what I spent my life doing. I found the Cuban boxing coach and I said, can you train me? And then I put the camera on you and you explain to them. And I helped him start his boxing channel. And I said, and you explain it, right? And then I'll do it. And then if I get better at it, then I can teach it. But I have to have someone teach me well, so that I can then teach it. Because I'm not going to teach it wrong. Yeah. But I know that it's not widespread like the Asian martial arts, but there are some really good Irish stick fighters who, and you know, for years and years, who for generation to generation pass down stick fighting. Yeah. And so those are the ones who I'm looking for. So I'm not sure, once the COVID lets up, I have a short list of where I want to travel. Ireland, obviously, town of Shillelagh. So I want to go there and I want to make 5, 6, 7 videos, interviews, and then say, you know, how do we get started? What's the warm up? What's the proper way to hold the fighting stick? What's the best material? You know, what do you have to? And like I said, I've seen enough to know that there's a lot of crossover. You know, and you do that too. When you pick up a new weapon, you know, I don't think there's a weapon I haven't trained with now. Yeah, I'm sure there are. You know, but not many. Whether it's Chinese, Korean, Japanese, you know, like a rope dart, the flexible weapon, the long weapon, short weapon, and there's so much crossover that you start to learn things. You know, part of it is that your brain learns to learn. Martial arts teaches you how to learn, how to codify things, how to break them down into small pieces, and so you can apply it to everything in life. But when it comes to weapons, like one weapon picks up to the next weapon, to the next weapon, to the next weapon. Yeah. So when I teach them in person, I always teach bow first, the long staff, and then the second thing that I teach is the nunchuck. And that's probably one of the harder ones to teach. But then the third thing that I teach are the collie sticks, because they're different enough, but they're all foundational weapons. So if you learn how to fight with those 3, then you can pretty much pick up all the other ones. The only one that I teach almost separately by itself is the Japanese sword, because it's so well defined as a martial art that and it's easy to do poorly, and it's hard to do really well. So and it takes thousands and thousands of repetition to build the muscle not just memory, but control and holding the positioning of the hands right and the body. But then once you learn that, I don't think there's a lot more, newness that you can learn. And I've been to seminars and training classes. I've done a lot of stage fighting and learned the quarterstaff. Peter Pan, Peter Pan's famous, and not just Peter Pan, Robin Hood. I was thinking the wrong one. Robin Hood. Little John, he's got the quarterstaff. So the quarterstaff. But if you talk to a purist in I forget even what they call the Eastern martial arts, then they'll say no. There's no crossover between the bow and the quarterstaff, but there are quite a bit. And I've done fencing too. And with the fencing, fencing is also a very narrowly defined group of movements done to an extremely high level of efficiency because of repetition.
Yeah.
And they're very explosive, very fast, and they're very small movements, where the Japanese style has a little bit more movement, but are very similar. So those two I find fit very well together. And then the Chinese sword, like the Dao and the broadsword, it's so impractical, right?
Yeah.
And big, flowery looping moves. If you think of a movie like Mulan that just came out, or Hidden Dragon, Crouching Tiger, I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
They look great and it works extremely well in the movies, but it's not practical. So
that's it, man.
Not sure if I answered your question.
Yeah.
The way you asked.
Yeah, definitely. And finally, Matt, how can people get in touch with you online and find your instruction?
I think the best way is still through YouTube. I have a large following on Facebook, about the same number, and it's a little bit more international on the Facebook channel. On Facebook, it's just it's my full name, Matt Pasquinilli, and you can find me on Facebook. 89tigers.com is one of the websites that I've had for a long time. I'm getting ready to merge that with pasquinilli.com. And so that's probably the best way if you want to reach out to me. I love to hear from people. So if they have a question or comment, they don't like me and they want to tell me off, then they're welcome and encouraged, right?
Yeah.
Send me whatever you want. But then go to the YouTube channel. Yesterday, I don't know if you saw, I did a lightsaber video.
Yeah, it was excellent.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I saw you over there.
Yeah.
But so follow. So on YouTube, just type in my last name. Make sure you spell it with all I's and not an E. Traditionally, it's spelled with an E, but my name is spelled with all I's. And they can find me there. But I've got new weapons coming this year too. So I'm going to start to teach, especially during the shutdown. Like you, I've got nothing but doing. So we'll add more and more weapons to the mix.